many of you to butterflies originally was just this sense of wonder and this sense of just it just kind of overtakes you. When I remember being a kid, seeing a swallowtail go through my backyard and learning about the monarch migration. So here's a quick video of what is certifiably the most magical place on the planet.
Okay, so I've driven for about 4 hours today from Mexico City to the top of this hill where now I'm on a horse, and we are about to see something I've wanted to see since I was about 5 years old. So at the end of every summer, millions, tens of millions of monarch butterflies take a journey south. Now, whether they're coming from Colorado, Connecticut, or even Canada, they all end up in this same forest here in the middle of Mexico. And I think it's gonna absolutely blow my mind. It's gonna blow the horse's mind, and I hope it blows your mind too. So let's keep riding.
After riding a little longer than hiking with my local guide Jose Luis, they started to appear. Hundreds of them in the sky, and then thousands on the side of the trail warming up in the sun. And trust me when I tell you, this is just the beginning.
Not sure if you listen carefully, you can hear it, but that's not wind. That is the sound of millions of butterflies flying around me right now. And it's probably my favorite sound ever.
So that area in Mexico, in Michoacan, it's one of my favorite examples for conservation, because I remember learning about it growing up. There is this migration that happens where hundreds of millions of butterflies go down to Mexico to this one specific forest. And all the pressure at the time for conservation, this theme of keeping the monarchs afloat and making sure this keeps happening, was everybody would tell me, like, it's the Mexicans that are going to mess it up. All the deforestation down there. Eventually the monarchs won't have any place to go. Well, as we've kind of learned over the last few decades, that's not exactly the case. The Mexicans have taken it quite seriously. The communities there really embrace the monarch butterfly. You'll see little drawings of it all over the walls and everything. And they've done a pretty good job of conserving that forest. Not perfect, but pretty good. And now we see that the big issue with monarchs is taking a look at where we are up north, and their entire flight pattern, and all these places across the US where they needed to have nectar sources, they needed to have milkweed sources, and they don't quite get access to that. So there's a lot of complexities that you learn when you're out there in the field compared to kind of what you're originally taught the story of this butterfly and the story of this conservation is. Now, I guide trips out there. I hope some of you have been there to experience it. If not, hit me up. We'll be guiding there again next February. I'd love to have you along. But one of my favorite moments is when I'm there with people who've never seen it before, and they look at a trunk of a tree, and they look at this clump in a tree, and they just say, okay, that's dark bark, and there's like pine cones or something. But what they don't realize is that that tree is all butterfly. So you can see right here, that entire trunk, I mean, that's easily 10,000 butterflies you're looking at right there. They're so densely packed in. It is so, so remarkable. And to be honest, so bizarre. So I want to tell you a little bit about my background when it comes to doing research with butterflies. When I was about 24, I accepted a job in Ecuador running a biological field station and the research projects. To afford the job, I had to sell my car and sell my mattress. I got paid about 125 bucks a week. But as you can see, hey, I had a good time. I got to literally swing on jungle vines when I was out there. And we were doing really cool research, analyzing the impact of a road on a rainforest. Because a road is much more than a road. It's access for illegal hunting, for illegal logging. It's access for side roads, for bigger communities. And so we were kind of monitoring this road as it went from a tiny dirt path to a bigger road to eventually getting paved, and seeing how the butterfly population and other species populations would be affected along the way. And it was the first time that I really started to kind of find this joy and just the strangeness of butterflies, especially the rare ones. So this image here, I wasn't much of a photographer back then, but there's this really rare butterfly called Anteros cupris. It's, to this day, I've only seen it twice. It has these really fuzzy white legs, beautiful details. It's a metal mark butterfly. And here it was feeding on a dead boa constrictor. And I was just like, okay, here's a rare butterfly feeding on a dead boa. Like what a combination. Not something that you would expect. You know, you think butterflies and flowers or butterflies and rotting fruit, maybe. But this kind of resource acquisition that it's going for was very strange. And so we started to kind of embrace this and say, okay, how do we, in our bait traps, you'll see right here, how do we attract the rarer butterflies so that we could document them? You will ID the species, we'll then put a little mark on the wing, and then we release them so that we can track if they come back. And rarely, I mean, we would occasionally get the same ones coming back, but in general, it was just like kind of a new population that was always going in, but it was all important data. And so to take inspiration from the dead boa, to make the best bait, we had to make something truly disgusting that I swear this formula works really well in the Amazon. We would take rotting fish, so cans of tuna that you'd open up, put in a jar and just let ferment in the sun. You would take your own urine. Yes, sometimes I'd have to pee in a jar and then pour it on rotting fish. And then you would add cheap beer, which there's plenty of that to go around. And so we would make this just god-awful combination that worked really, really well to attract really rare butterflies. Now, that smelled terrible. But what it allowed me to do was to be very hands-on. We would use tweezers, forceps. I've gotten very good at being able to handle butterflies in a way that doesn't damage them over the many years of me working with them. And you get to learn certain characteristics of them that are a little strange. So look at these factors here. Look at these terms: burnt ketchup, vanilla cake, brownie batter, Fruit Loops, barbecue potato chips, maple syrup. What do you think these have to do with butterflies? Well, I'll tell you what, the calico butterfly, the owl butterfly, oftentimes the males smell like burnt ketchup. Male swallowtails smell like Fruit Loops. A lot of the Ithomia butterflies will smell like barbecue potato chips. And then there's another Brasalis kind of related to the owl butterfly. I swear to you, it smelled exactly like brownie batter, not a cooked brownie, like an actual raw brownie batter that you're licking off the spoon. And it's so interesting that butterflies will smell so interesting. So of course the question is why? Well, I'm sure many of you know that butterflies have different ways of communicating. So there's obviously the visual way that they can communicate, but then they also have these incredible antennae that are able to perceive just the smallest of molecules and identify each other. So these are pheromones from the male to signal to the female that, hey, I'm the right kind of male, I'm the right species, you should mate with me. And you'll even see sometimes the butterflies like wafting over the female and releasing his pheromone onto her if she's sitting there on a leaf or on a flower, just saying like, hey, smell me, smell me, smell me, like blowing it over her antennae so that she can recognize like, hey, this is the right species. This is that male that smells like Fruit Loops and not the one that smells like barbecue potato chips, because that's obviously the wrong species. And the other funny thing was, imagine being so far in the middle of the rainforest. Just, I mean, we were hours and hours and hours away from the nearest tiny town there. You'd have to take a boat ride to get to the nearest city, and, you know, very far from home. Yet there I am in the middle of the jungle, just craving Fruit Loops or craving vanilla cake or barbecue potato chips because you smell it on a butterfly. I would just sit there and just smell them for a second and be like, wow, this is nice. I could use some good old American barbecue potato chips right now, but they're very far away. So you let the butterfly go to go smell on a female someday. So that was one of my first introductions into just the oddities of butterflies. But what I'd like to do is give you an example of what my journeys are like. So when I go down to Peru, the first thing that I usually do is have to take a couple other small flights and then a bus, and then you get on a boat. And I absolutely So you can see, by the way, Rosemary, were you able to, you could shoot me a text if you can't hear the audio on the videos. I believe I set it up so you could still hear the audio on the video.
Yeah, no, we can definitely hear you. You just got muted for 1 second and I'm not sure why. So I just muted you.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that people could hear the video and not me for 1 second.
Oh, perfect.
So,
yeah, no, I can hear it fine. So
awesome.
I think you're all set.
Great. Great. Well, so this river ride is always this magical thing that you kind of get entranced by because you have to spend so many hours on a river. And of course, when you're there, you got your camera out and you're looking on the side of the river and you're saying, okay, what are we going to see today? Sometimes it's a jaguar, sometimes it's a tapir. Every day you'll see capybara, those giant mammals that are, I mean, they're the biggest rodent in the world. They're like 40, 50-pound rodent. But every once in a while, you see some really amazing butterflies. So take a look at this. This is just magic. So some of you may be familiar with what's going on here. I'm going to play it one more time because it's just my favorite thing ever. This is called puddling. And this is what, in general, male butterflies do to get minerals. Minerals that are important because when they mate with the female, they will give her a nuptial gift. So they not only pass on their genetics through sperm, but they also will pass on nutrients. And in this case, one of the rare nutrients is sodium and potassium and other minerals like that. Now, the butterflies, you can find them just on any sandy bank under the right conditions, but this one, they were all over for a very specific reason. And I could smell it when I got close. And that was, you may remember from before what I use in some of the baits. It's someone had just peed right there. You could see there's the boat dock. And so a lot of the boat workers would kind of come in and out. And I think someone peed there. And so, yes, I may have crawled in someone's pee, but my goodness, was it worth it for that footage? Because that was just one of the best examples of puddling I've ever seen. But let's keep going, because as insanely gorgeous as that is, that's not the most bizarre butterfly thing you will see. Take a look at this. So yes, we've got a swallowtail butterfly. We have Julia butterfly, and they are swarming these turtles. Like, look at that. And the turtles kind of go along with it, but you'll see sometimes they'll just be like, this is, no, just imagine yourself trying to get some sun and having a butterfly land and drink from your eyeball. So this that we're seeing right here, this is butterflies doing that same puddling behavior where they're trying to get minerals, but where's a more concentrated version of salts. I mean, we've tasted our tears anytime you've done that. It's there's a lot of salt in there, and turtles have the same thing. And they kind of control their osmotic gradient by letting salt out of their eyes. So these butterflies just pester these poor things. Here's some other footage of it that I took that the BBC ended up using.
What you are seeing is real. This isn't some trick of CGI. On sunny days, under certain conditions in the Amazon, turtles come out to get sun, and butterflies and bees absolutely swarm them.
So as you can see, I mean, there's what, 7, 8 different butterfly species all doing the same behavior of drinking the tears of turtles. And when I first posted this video, I kid you not, I had so many people just saying it was CGI, it was fake, CGI, it was fake. Like, people did not believe me. Partially because it looks so, I mean, obviously it's an odd coupling of those, but also because I filmed in higher frame per second, so I could kind of slow it down. So people aren't quite used to seeing butterflies in that way. But I kid you not, under the right conditions, this is like the #1 thing I'm looking for when I'm on a river in the Amazon. Everybody else is like, let's find a jaguar. I'm like, let's find some turtles getting their tears drank by butterflies, because it's such a cool interaction and just so odd. So let's continue. Let's go on a ride. We've taken a boat ride. Now we've landed on shore. Let's get in the jungle. real quick. So that area Tambopata is just, it's one of the most remarkable places you will ever see because it has such high biodiversity, such high abundance. And with that, that's really when you get to see butterflies kind of interact with nature as they've evolved to interact, you could say. A lot of areas you go to, the forest has, it's maybe secondary forest, so it's been cut down, kind of grown back halfway, or there's a lot of species missing from that forest. But here, if you want to see rare butterflies, now remember, we talked about it on the boat, you look for turtles. On the trail, you look for this. This is a steamy pile of jaguar poop. And what's wild is when you look at it, like, okay, this butterfly, for one thing, is a canopy specialist. So this is one I've seen way, way, way up in the trees. I've never seen it come down to the ground, but it did for jaguar poop, of all things. And it's not alone. Like, clearly, this is a very unique resource there, because I always like to compare it to, like, in Africa, there's the water holes that I've seen in the documentaries where there's like a lion or a zebra drinking water next to a gazelle, which is next to a lion, and they all kind of gather at this really precious resource that is water. And here, that really precious resource that brings in, I think I counted 4 different orders of insects. We have grasshoppers, flies, beetles, and butterflies, and they all gathered around to drink and eat this jaguar scat. And what I think is going on is not just the mineral content of carnivore. So carnivore scat is very important to these things. If you find any carnivore scat, you'll find really good salt, but also they have different types of nitrogen and other types of things in there that scientists are just starting to understand, that these butterflies are almost meat eaters with the type of stuff that they're getting from this scat. It's a little different than what you're used to, but it is, it's one of those lessons that when I thought about it, I was like, okay, there's huge areas along the river where these freshwater turtles, you don't see them because the people eat their eggs and they overharvest the eggs. And so you don't get any turtles. So then, okay, what do the butterflies do for their sodium? Does that actually affect them or not? We don't really know. There's also huge areas of the Amazon rainforest where there are no jaguars. There are no big predators because humans have hunted them out. So what does a butterfly like this do to get these types of really rare resources? I don't know. Like, you would think, okay, there's got to be enough poop of something out there that these butterflies will find something. But look at the way they all gather around, and this resource is only there for, maybe 10 minutes before it gets eaten up by everything. So if there's no big jaguars or other big carnivores around, where are they going to find that nitrogen or that sodium or that potassium? Not sure. So these are things that when I was working on my PhD, these were the types of questions I was going to be answering, because it's so interesting that a butterfly and a turtle and a jaguar would have anything to do with each other on the food chain, yet they do somehow. And it's something I would always love to go back and get my PhD someday. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying the work I'm doing, and so gonna keep at it with that. Now, one of the first butterflies I ever saw when I went to my first rainforest, I was 15 years old, went to Nicaragua. That's where my dad's family is from. So when we were there, I begged everybody and said, okay, can you take me to the rainforest? So we went to this Volcan Mombacho, this Mombacho volcano there. And one of the first, we were a little higher altitude, a little cloudy. One of the first butterflies I saw was this clearwing butterfly. And it blew my mind that this thing is real. Here's some footage I got in Peru, and you'll see why it's called the clearwing butterfly. So look at the way you can basically see through its wing. It has a little bit of a sheen to it that I think is its way of being able to communicate with other butterflies. But honestly, when you see it, especially in the shadows, it just blends right in. So in this one patch of these white flowers, I saw probably 50 of these butterflies. I'm going to play it one more time. 50 of these clearwing butterflies and these others in the Ithomyine group. And they were feeding on this one flower for a very particular reason. And oftentimes in nature, if you see a bunch of related species feeding on one specific thing, you say, okay, there's something evolutionarily happening there. It's not just your average flower. Something's weird about it. And you can see this male butterfly is really digging into it. And the weird thing that makes this butterfly this flower stand out is that it is poisonous. This is an incredibly poisonous group of plants that if you or I or a bird or a monkey ate, we'd be in a lot of trouble. We'd probably be puking, have some heart issues. It would not be very fun. But these butterflies drink it right up. Now, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, this is a common thing where oftentimes at the caterpillar stage, a butterfly will eat something that is toxic and kind of be able to incorporate that into their own body and their own structure to become chemically protected themselves. But it's rare that they get this chemical as an adult. But it doesn't end right here. I always say it's one of the strangest, most romantic gifts you could give for this butterfly is the gift of poison. And we talked about nuptial gifts before. When a male mates with a female, he gives her the genetics through the sperm, but then also something to sustain her. Oftentimes it can be protein or minerals. But in this case, he's given her the gift of chemical protection. So he will make about a third of his dry weight. This chemical, like, just completely fills up with this really noxious nectar so that A, he's poisonous and protected, but B, when he mates with a female, he gives that gift to her and says, here you go, now you're protected too. It's a different version of chivalry amongst the butterflies. But what's also really endearing about this scenario is that poison doesn't just end there. What we're seeing right here, this really beautiful interaction starts here, and then the male mates with the female and goes to the female. And then when she lays eggs, those eggs still have some of that poison protecting them at that stage. You know, and that could be weeks later, it could be days later, but it's just really beautiful to me that this really special moment can just be passed on to the next generation and help protect them chemically. And so it's bizarre, but it's really, really wonderful. So I want to tell you very briefly, how are we doing on time? I think we're doing good. A little bit about some of the research that I've done and some of the discoveries I've made that have kind of made us look at butterflies a little bit different. So here's one of my most recent publications. I was walking through the rainforest, and lots of times you see weird things, and then you look them up and you're like, oh, that's not that weird. It's fine. But this one, I was like, this is kind of weird. This was a butterfly hanging out with ants. And I could tell the butterfly, its proboscis was out. It was drinking out the tip of this bamboo shoot, but it was next to these ants. And I was like, I don't normally see ants and butterflies hang out, but maybe there's something going on here. And the time that we do see ants and caterpillars hanging out, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, this happens a lot with blue butterflies. They'll have this symbiotic relationship where the ants protect the caterpillar, and in return, the caterpillar will have these little kind of dewdrop things come out of its back end that you could see the out of focus ant in the back is drinking out of the back of that caterpillar. So caterpillar gives the ant food, the ant gives the caterpillar protection. Classic symbiotic relationship. It does get taken advantage of sometimes. Sometimes butterflies will kind of trick them, or the caterpillars will. But I'd never really heard of butterflies and ants interacting in this way. So I went back the next day and I saw this. It wasn't just one butterfly. This is not a fluke. Here we have 3 different individuals all hanging out at the top of this little bamboo shoot, and it's also being swarmed with ants. And these ants are all over the place. And the other thing that's weird is these butterflies spent hours, I kid you not, sitting right there. And in the shot, we have 2 males and 1 female. And I've watched male and female butterflies interact a lot over the years, and I've never seen a male just be so kind of complacent next to a female. Normally, if they see a female, they're like, I got to try to mate with her. I got to, give her a waft of my Fruit Loops pheromone or something. Because they don't know the next time they're going to encounter another female in the forest, or maybe she's already mated, or maybe there's a competing male around. So the fact that these 2 males are just sitting next to this female, drinking this bamboo, I was like, all right, something weird is happening here. And the ants too, they were clearly kind of sharing the resource, but I was like, maybe these ants just don't care about butterflies and they don't really eat meat. Maybe they're just, they just like drinking this bamboo stuff. So what I did is I grabbed a couple moths and I had them in my forceps, and I kind of put it up to the ants just to see how they would react. And the second a moth got near that bamboo shoot, the ants immediately wanted to try to eat it. They were like, any Lepidoptera is delicious. They were just all about it, trying to eat it. And I was like, okay, so somehow these butterflies can coexist next to these ants and not get eaten. The ants don't see them as prey. I don't know what they see them as. So to figure that out, I basically spent hours and hours and hours sitting on my butt in the jungle, just watching these, getting swarmed by mosquitoes and trying to figure out what was happening. And I have this really specialized macro lens so I could take photos like this. This is an ant crawling on the wing of a butterfly. And they did it in a way that they were just kind of like buds. Like it wasn't the butterfly didn't freak out and try to flap it off. The ant wasn't trying to eat the butterfly. Like this is a giant ant crawling on a butterfly and they're spending time together. It's pretty unusual. When I really zoomed in, I could see here's two butterflies. The proboscis is drinking from the tip of that bamboo, and the ants are there basically trying to drink from it as well. But they were getting pushed out of the way. The ants were okay with that. Like the butterflies would use their forelegs and just be like, I'm the one drinking this. And the ants would just say, okay. But it gets even weirder because here, I believe this is the only photo that exists of a butterfly stealing food out of the mouth of an ant. Like it's going straight into that mouth. That ant had just been drinking on that bamboo for a long time, sucked it right out of there. And just the ant allowed it to happen. So what's happening here? Where is the relationship happening? So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you will see a tiny thing basically between the two legs of the ant. And that tiny little wormy thing sticking out there is the caterpillar of the butterfly. So what we realize is this butterfly's entire life history happens on this single plant, this single bamboo. It doesn't go anywhere else. As an adult, it spends its entire time feeding at the tip of the bamboo, then it mates, and then it lays eggs on this bamboo, and the caterpillar then eats it. And if you're familiar with host plants, it's very unusual for butterflies, other than skippers, to feed on anything in the grass or bamboo family. It's very weird. And not only that, but there weren't many signs of herbivory on the bamboo. Seems like this caterpillar also is drinking this juice. I don't know what this juice is. This is another thing we need to follow up with scientifically, is analyzing it, because like they're able to completely sustain and grow from that. And what we found is that at that stage, the ant and the caterpillar had a symbiotic relationship, and that ants would protect the caterpillar would feed the ant. So that's gravy. That's something we've seen that's evolved multiple times in this group. And it's fascinating, but there was something else going on here. So we had to keep looking into it. And our current hypothesis is that the butterfly either retains this smell pheromone that says, I smell like you, I'm an ant, or it completely masks its pheromone and says, like, you don't even know what I am. But what gets even more interesting here is when you look at this, I looked at these images for hours and just tried to figure out what's happening here. Look at an ant, okay? Everybody knows insects have three main segments. On the ant, you see these three red. We got the head, thorax, abdomen. And then look at the wing of the butterfly. The color is almost identical to that of the ant. And you have these very clear segments marked out as they spend time together. So our hypothesis is basically that these butterflies as adults are kleptoparasites. So they're not a full-on parasite, but they steal the resource that something else is protecting. These ants are protecting the resource, the butterfly steals it. But the butterfly then is just completely exposed at the top of this bamboo shoot, and some bird could come pick it up. So what does it do? It disguises itself as an ant. And this is the only known butterfly that has the shape of another insect in its wing. And what's wild is that the species, Atelatipa annulifera, has been known for about 100 years. I think it was discovered in 1921, so now exactly 100 years. But no one made the association of this pattern with seeing these ants. And it wasn't until I spent the time in the rainforest, the same thing I've been doing since I was a little kid, and just observing and watching and photographing and just sitting there for hours watching butterflies, these things that I love, that this pattern emerged. And I kid you not, I lost sleep trying to figure out what the scenario was here, what was happening. And when I finally was like, oh, I see the pattern there, it was just this aha moment that I knew we had a great publication. It was featured in National Geographic and some other areas. And it was just a really fun thing, because at the time I wasn't associated with university. I'm still not. I collaborate with a lot of universities, but I didn't do any magical thing other than just appreciate and spend time with butterflies. I observed them, I photographed them, and I started to note these patterns. And when it comes to groups like the Massachusetts Butterfly Club, I think you all are doing that exact thing. I saw that you're monitoring some of the rare butterflies around, and you have this potential to make these really incredible natural history observations that basically won't be known until someone spends the time to observe them and see them doing what they do in nature, and see them really in their most pristine form, and where they're protected, where they're able to interact with the native species. That's another thing, that if the habitat's been affected, maybe they don't have the same species that they basically evolved to be alongside, or evolved to have these behaviors next to. So that's where I think there's so many discoveries yet to be made, especially in this natural history front. And it doesn't take going to the Amazon to do it. There's plenty of amazing things that happen here. New species being found all the time, literally in people's backyards. So yeah, just I hope you have kind of seen that there's these oddities to appreciate about butterflies alongside the more traditional things that people appreciate about them. And the more you embrace these oddities, the higher the chance that you have of really documenting something unique. And when you find something unique and you're able to capture it in the right way and tell this story and tell these photos, that makes people out there appreciate butterflies. You know, if I just said I found a new species of butterfly in the Amazon, that wouldn't have made National Geographic. But when you say, hey, here's this really complex, interesting thing, and a butterfly stealing out of the mouth of an ant, that will get featured in places and gets more of this good butterfly loving appreciation out there. And so that's been my mission. And I'm going back to Peru a couple times later this year, now that I'm vaccinated, and down there, at least in those remote areas, they've been pretty good at being careful with it. And so as I keep doing all my TV stuff and enjoying living that life, like my calling since I was that kid lying on a football field looking up has always been butterflies. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions about any of the observations I've had. And yeah.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Phil. I feel like we went on a tropical vacation, which I really think I really needed. Do folks have questions? Looks like maybe not.
Okay.
People are mostly saying they had a great time and they're fascinated. And Danielle says, did you sink into sediment?
I guess it depends which sediment we're talking about. On the side of a river, in the quicksands, there's been a lot of times I've almost sunk into sediment. When I was in Mongolia in the quicksand, thankfully I was able to, like, they taught me, they're like, don't step in that, you can step in this. And then actually some of the butterflies on the side of a river, where some of the water kind of streams from inland, if you step in that, it's essentially, they call it quicksand there. It's essentially something that could suck you up. And I've been laughed at quite a bit by the local guides there when I'm chasing butterflies and take a big step and it goes up to my knees and they have to yank me out of it. So yes, I've fallen in the sediment.
Someone asks, are there any butterflies in New England that smell like human food?
Yes, male swallowtail. So I'm pretty sure the black swallowtail, definitely the eastern tiger swallowtail, they 100% smell like Fruit Loops. So if any of you do any butterfly rearing or anything, or get a chance to just get your nose close to a male swallowtail butterfly, I guarantee you will be like, that is Fruit Loops. And that was the first scent I learned growing up about butterflies. And it was like, it's just so fun. Like, who would have known?
Wow. That is something I've never tried. I need to try that.
Get on it, Rosemary. Come on.
Betsy asks, were you in Macheros for the monarchs? I don't know how to say that.
Macheros. I'm not sure where Macheros is, to be honest. We went to Agangeo, Sierra Cinque, and one other one that is not coming to my head right now. But, Piedra Errada. None of them are very easy to say, but they're all very very unique. And what's incredible is when I thankfully can go pretty much every year now, and you'll be like, the butterflies were last year on this tree, and now they're like one tree over. But this isn't the same butterfly. Like there are 4 generations separating them, and somehow in their genetics and in their ability to navigate, which is its own thing that I can't wait for them to fully solve how the butterflies do it. Or I actually kind of love the fact that we haven't fully solved it, because that just means there's these mysteries out there. But it's pretty incredible that the monarchs are able to make it to this exact little sides of the mountain and same tree as the year before.
Let's see. I know you probably need to get rolling, Phil. I don't want to, there are questions rolling in, so feel free.
It's all right, we can do, let's do 3 more, see how it goes.
All right. So Gary sent me a direct message, but he wants to know, how the heck did you focus on flying butterflies with video?
Oh my gosh. I wish I could show you the behind the scenes. I need to. As I was watching this, I was like, I need to show you the behind the scenes. So I have this camera that I love. I recommend it to anyone who wants to do video. It's called the GH5. It's not that expensive. I got the GH5S, and it's stock lens. It has this 12 to 15 millimeter lens, happens to do really good wide angle macros. So you can get very close to something and still film it with all of its environment. So what I did is I basically set a focal distance to about this. I manually focused it, or maybe it was a little closer, maybe about this. Manually focused it, put in 240 frames per second, meaning you could slow all the video down by 10. And I chased butterflies. Like I looked like a complete idiot, where I basically was holding this, and as a butterfly went, I would just follow, because these things are really fast. And so you basically are like, click record, follow. And think about it. If it's slowed down 10 times, if I have 3 good seconds of footage, that's 30 seconds of footage. So those are kind of the numbers that you work with. And so I spent a few days trying to get that of the Clearwing going, because I just kept missing, or I got the time wrong, because I didn't realize that they load up on this toxin early in the day, and then they're out looking for females the rest of the day. So one of the days I was like, I'll go at 2 p.m. when the sun came out, not a butterfly to be seen. So I had to go early, and you basically, you just literally chase them. One of the other lenses that I use on my iPhone, so the first butterfly puddling one on the side, I actually filmed that on my iPhone, and I use this lens called the Moment wide angle lens. And it is my go-to for taking on a walk when I'm trying to see butterflies, because again, you can focus very close, like probably that close away, and it's wide. So you can go up to a little butterfly and get some really nice footage of it, and just kind of back off, and it's all on your iPhone. So wow. A lot of chasing butterflies.
Man, I want to see footage now of you chasing after the butterfly camera. That is incredible. Okay, maybe couple more questions. Okay, so Carl and Elise want to know, what are the places that you do tours to? So do you lead your own tours?
Yeah, so I lead my own tours. It's kind of a year by year thing, depending on how busy the TV work and everything is. But I love doing this work, because to me, it's way more rewarding to spend a week with 15 people, getting to show them this forest I love and the species I love, than spending a week doing a TV show for thousands of people. But you don't really get that like feeling of like people are experiencing these things the same way. So I lead right now. I go to Galapagos, the monarchs in Mexico, Tambaupata, Peru, that's southeastern Peru, and then along the Napo River in Ecuador. And so they're all been selected by places I've done research. I have worked. I have great connections with scientists and the locals in all these areas. So, and I know them better than I know the ecosystem outside. So I love doing tours to these places. And Rosemary, I could send you a link once we have them up for the next year, if anybody wants to come along, because I tell you what, the Mexico trip is incredible. The Ecuador trip, you'll see more blue morphos in a single day than you ever thought possible. Like it's just blue morpho heaven there. And then in Peru, that's where you get the puddling thing that really shines on the river there. It's remarkable.
Wow. Yeah, please pass that on, because a lot of club members travel a lot. A lot of us go to the Texas Butterfly Festival and then beyond for some really cool stuff. Cool. Let me see if there are any other. Okay, one last question. How many hours do you think you spent studying that ant butterfly complex?
That's a good question. I mean, here's the deal. If you include the hours that because there was like 4 spots in the rainforest that I found this happening. So I spent so many hours trying to find that interaction. And anytime I found bamboo, there was 2 different species of bamboo that are found there. One's more lowland, one's in the slightly higher elevation area. And they would only be on this higher elevation bamboo. So, I mean, I don't know, countless hours just trying to find it. You know, you kind of get these search patterns. So when I'm out there doing all sorts of things, I'm always looking for the bamboo. The other tricky thing is this is one of the fastest growing plant species in the world. So one day I took a photo of bamboo at like knee height. And then the next day I had to stand, like, I kid you not, it grew like feet overnight. And then after that, it got even higher. So your time of being able to observe that window is very short. And then to actually sit there and watch them, that I probably spent, 5 hours for several days. And then I also had another colleague, Aaron Pomerantz, who's a really amazing butterfly researcher, does a lot of genetic work with them. He was the one who kind of solved the larval thing with it. So he also spent a bunch of hours out there observing them because I knew he was going to the field site. And I was like, dude, look at this butterfly. And he did. So it was very fun to put in the work. But it's one of the other things I was trying to find with them was, does the butterfly feed the ant the same way the caterpillar feeds the ant? So where does any liquid come out of a butterfly? It's butt. So I spent hours with my macro lens just looking at this butterfly's butt, waiting for it to pee and seeing how the ants reacted. And so a butterfly only pees, like if it's not drinking a bunch of liquid, it's maybe once every 10 to 20 minutes, that one at least. So you just sit there and you're just waiting for that moment. And then a butterfly would pee and I'd be like, what's the ant doing? And take a bunch of photos. And it ends up that the ants did not care. They would actually tap the butterfly's butt, trying to get something out of it. I think they kind of assumed it was like the caterpillar, but when the butterfly peed, the pee just went on the floor. So they're really tricking them. I don't know why you're laughing, Rosemary. This is science we're talking about.
You're right. You're right. Well, thank you so much, Phil. This was an absolute delight. What a nice mixed media presentation, and your enthusiasm and encouragement is really, really wonderful. So thank you so much. And
thank you all. And I'm traveling often for my show, and so I always end up in a state where I'm looking for people to hang out with. So if I end up in Massachusetts this season, I'll be sure to hit you guys up and go look for some rare butterflies.
We are the crew. We know where they all are. So yeah.
Awesome.
We reach out. Thank you, Phil.
All right.
Thank you so much, Phil.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Take care.